Good afternoon. We'll go ahead and call to order the regular meeting for the City of Murfreesboro Board of Zoning Appeals for June 25th, 2014. First item on the agenda is the consideration of minutes for our regular meeting on May 28th. Those minutes were included with our agenda materials. Are there any changes to those minutes? If not, those minutes will stand approved as presented, and we'll move on to new business. First, taking up a sign variance request. It's application S14038 by Mr. Kyle Fiedler of Bozeman Sign Company for Murfreesboro Hotel Partnership. And he's requesting a variance from the sign ordinance, which prohibits a sign placed in or over a public utility or drainage easement. And this is for property located at 1335 Conference Center Boulevard. Ms. Kerr, if you'd review that one for us, please.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers, members of the board. The applicant, Kyle Felder, with Bozeman Sign Company, representing Murfreesboro Hotel Partners, LLC, is requesting a variance from Section 25 1/4 24A22 of the City of Murfreesboro Sign Ordinance, which prohibits a sign placed in or over a public utility or drainage easement without the consent of the easement holders and Board of Zoning Appeals approval. The sign is located at 1335 Conference Center Boulevard and is within the GD01. The applicant is requesting permission to erect one internally illuminated push-through style freestanding wall sign with 20 square foot display area and overall height of 4 foot. The sign will be located within a 30-foot public utility easement and a 25-foot storm drainage easement. The sign for a city easement agreement has been signed by all utility holders, and letters have been received from Atmos Energy and AT&T. The sign in a city easement agreement has also been signed by the Murfreesboro City Engineer as well as the Director of Building and Codes. CUD has no water in the utilities and has no interest in the easement at this time. And because of the sensitivity of the placement of the sign in regard to utility lines, the line has been located on site by a Tennessee registered engineer, and the applicant will comply with all other setbacks and regulations. Mr. Felder did supply you all with a picture of the sign in question that will be at Garden Hilton Hotel, and it shows that it's about 16 foot off of the curb. They've tried to place it as best as they could and still have some visibility with it. Mr. Felder is also here, as well as myself, to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Ms. Kerr. Any questions for Ms. Kerr? All right, thank you, ma'am. Mr. Fielder, anything you'd like to add to the application?
No, that's not what she said.
All right. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against the application, if you would please come forward. And seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussions or motion.
Make a motion we approve. A second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that application has been approved. And we'll move on with our variance request. We have one there. It's application Z14039 by Mr. Steve Steele for Huddleston Steel Engineering for PNB Holding Company number 2. He's requesting a 15-foot variance from the minimum required 35-foot front building setback for principal structures. And this is for property located in a residential single-family RS10 zone at 2703 Lockwood Court, which is in the River's Edge subdivision. And Mr. Baum, if you'd review that one for us, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman Rogers, and good afternoon, Chairman Rogers and members of the board. Our one variance request today is for a front setback variance request on Lot 26 of the River's Edge subdivision, which is located just east of the Cason Lane extension. This is a similar request to one that the board saw back in January of last year. Just as some background, River's Edge was one of a handful of different subdivisions that was going to be developed by one developer, and then the recession hit, and each of those tracts that the previous developer was going to develop went into different hands, and PNB Holding Company number 2 is the turned into a developer after the original developer was no longer in the picture for this. Because the various subdivisions were no longer under the same unified vision and under the same ownership, the City Council rezoned the property in question, which was originally zoned PRD, Planned Residential District, to the traditional bulk zoning classifications of RS10 and RS12, primarily because they weren't under that same vision, and the amenities, which were all going to be included in the subdivision, were no longer going to be provided. And so therefore, it made the most sense to rezone the property to RS10 for this tract and RS12 for some other ones, so that they could be developed in a more fragmented fashion as opposed to under the single developer. With that being said, the PRD subdivision, or the PRD zoning, had lesser setbacks than the RS10 zoning does. And the infrastructure was already put into place, and the lots were essentially designed with the setbacks for the previous PRD in mind. And this has not been a problem with most of the lots in the subdivision. Most of the lots in the subdivision are large enough to accommodate the RS10 setbacks. But there are several lots in the subdivision which are shallower than others, and which it makes it very difficult to build a house on these lots. And that's what we saw back in January of 2013. There were 2 lots that were just so much smaller, and they would have been able to accommodate a house with the PRD setbacks, but with the RS10 setbacks, they could not. The original PRD zone for River's Edge required a 25-foot front setback, 5-foot side setbacks, and a 20-foot rear setback. The current RS10 zone requires a 35-foot front setback, 10-foot side setbacks, and a 25-foot rear setback. The sides are not an issue. It's the depth of this lot. And the applicants are requesting a 15-foot front setback variance to basically allow for the same depth of building envelope that was there when this lot was originally designed and back when the property was zoned PRD. The applicant does indicate that in his opinion, the hardship here is that the lot was developed with those reduced setbacks in mind, and that it is very difficult to build a house on this lot with the RS10 setbacks. And he further goes on to state that the buyer of the home, which is a home building contractor, says that the lot that they have, or the house that they have proposed, is one of their smaller homes, and they still cannot fit it on the lot as it exists with the current setbacks. And the applicant further states that being able to push the house closer to the street will allow for a more substantial backyard. And in addition, there is a 20-foot drainage easement at the rear of the lot, so pushing the house beyond that 25-foot rear setback any more than 5 feet would not be possible anyway, because no structures would be allowed to be constructed in that easement. If the board approves this variance request, staff recommends the following condition: a front entry garage will not be allowed for the principal structure. And this was the same condition of approval that the board placed upon the other 2 lots in this subdivision back in January of 2013. Having a side entry garage or a rear entry garage on this lot will allow for there to be sufficient parking off-street, whereas having a front entry garage would only leave with a 20-foot setback, would not leave sufficient parking on site. So the side entry garage will allow for a deeper driveway than a front entry garage. And with that being said, I'll show you some exhibits and some photographs. This is the aerial photograph that shows the lot as of 2013. It is right in the center of that cul-de-sac of Lockwood Court. This is the proposed plot plan, and they are showing a side entry garage which would conform to the proposed condition of approval. And the morning room at the back of the house is right on the 25-foot rear setback line. And you can see the proposed house is approximately 20 feet off the rear property line as opposed to 35. This is a photograph of the lot, looking at the lot from the cul-de-sac. This is the drainage easement at the rear of the lot. This is the adjacent property to the north and the adjacent property to the south. With that being said, I'll be happy to answer any questions, and Mr. Steele is in the audience if you have any questions for him.
All right, questions for Mr. Blomley?
Chairman Rogers, I need to make a comment. This applicant looks to be indirectly related to my employer, so I'll need to abstain from any discussion or vote on this application.
All right. Go ahead and note that in the minutes. Any other questions for Mr. Blomley? Matthew, you mentioned this is one of the smaller house plans. Do you know what the square footage for this house is?
I do not, but Mr. Steele may be able to answer that question.
Okay. And then the rear setback changed from it was 20 feet, and now it's changed to 25 feet?
Correct.
Why haven't we explored pushing this back 5 feet instead of having it almost sitting on top of the road?
I think that the reason why Mr. Steele has requested the front setback variance was to leave as much backyard as possible.
Okay. Do you know what the other two lots, what number the other two lots were that we
They
looked at
were, I
earlier?
believe, 5 and 7, which they're across Parkwood Drive, which is the main. You see that Mr. Steele included a copy of the subdivision plat.
Yeah, on Big B Court.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And they're cul-de-sac type lots too.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Blomley? Mr. Steele?
Yes, Chairman Rogers, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Steve Steele with Huddleston Steel Engineering. I might mention I'm here representing the owner, PNB Holding Company. PNB stands for Pinnacle National Bank, and Mr. Dale Floyd with Pinnacle is here with me today also. Considering your question, Chairman Rogers, I looked at the plot plan, which was prepared by someone else. The house is approximately 40 feet wide, 50 foot deep, give or take. So that's about a 2,000 square foot footprint. But it also has a morning room at the back and a projection or two at the front. As Matthew mentioned, and I'll mention, Matthew did a very good job of explaining the situation while we're here today. This situation was anticipated several years ago when we looked at the greater plan of development that was under fractured ownership and could not be developed with the one vision that was planned. We realized that with our cul-de-sac lots and lots 5 and 7 that were approved, the variance was approved in January, and this one here is also a cul-de-sac lot. Those create special circumstances anyway because of the arcs and the radius, and yet we tend to still build rectangular or square-shaped homes, so that makes it difficult. I'm not aware of any other requests coming down the pike. I can't say that there won't be, but I believe this section, River's Edge, is about 70% built, either completed or under construction. So there aren't many more lots where we would have this potential condition.
Is there a minimum square foot size by covenant in this subdivision?
There are restrictive covenants. I don't recall the minimum square footage. Do you, Matthew?
I do not.
But these are relatively, as Matthew showed you a picture, these are relatively large homes. I think most are two-story. The footprint that I mentioned, 2,000 square feet, would be the first floor. But no, sir, I'm not familiar with exactly what those restrictions are.
So this is a two-story house, I guess?
That is my assumption. I did not draw the house plans, but I would assume so, just based on the other homes that are built out there.
Okay, so around a 4,000 square foot house, maybe a little bit less.
I would say a little less. Generally, the upstairs portion would not be quite as large of living space as the downstairs portion.
Is there a difficulty with pushing it back 5 feet into the, having a rear easement, a rear setback?
Well, the difficulty is, I know Matthew had a picture of the drainage easement at the back. It may be kind of hard to see it in two dimensions, but that drainage easement actually contains a relatively deep and wide drainage ditch that provides the major drainage through that area. If you pushed it back 5 feet, it would push it closer to that ditch. One thing I might point out, when you're thinking about it being too close to the road, I understand your concern, especially if you're going down a straight street and the homes line up one after another, and all of a sudden, whoa, there's a house out here in front of all the others, which can look odd. But in this case, with the cul-de-sac and with the circular nature of the cul-de-sac, and when you drive in and drive around a cul-de-sac, you don't have that straight line point of reference where all the homes line up. They're going to all sit at different angles, and it's not going to seem close to the road, I don't believe.
Do you believe that you could get a house within the setbacks on this lot that meets the minimum square footage for the subdivision?
I don't know that I'm prepared to answer that today. I would say if you did, it would not meet the expectations of the neighborhood with the other houses that are built in the neighborhood. It would be quite a bit smaller, and the shape. I mean, the builder is Fox Ridge Homes. They have floor plans that they develop, and people decide they want them to build a home. I think all these homes have been built for individuals as opposed to under speculation. So somebody has picked out this house plan, and that's the one they want to buy on that lot. Now, we did ask, is this the smallest plan you had? And the answer we got was, I don't remember the exact wording, but it's one of the very smallest. They didn't say it was absolutely the very smallest they could build, but I think with the intent of what they're trying to do with their neighborhood, if they put something smaller, I think it would stick out worse than a concern about it being close to the road.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Steele? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, this time we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against the application, if you would, please come forward. Seeing none, declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussions or motion.
If there's no further discussion, given the history of the development of the lot, I'm okay with this variance. Seems like it has to do with cul-de-sac lots that we've dealt with. So I'll make a motion to approve the application, subject to any staff comments.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Steele, that application has been approved. Thank you, sir. All right. right, fairly short agenda today, mercifully short. Is there any other staff reports and other business?
Well, I figured since we have a short agenda, I would take the opportunity to have Mr. Lewis come down and give our mid-year training update.
All right, Mr. Lewis, you're welcome to fill up the next 2.5 hours here for us.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers, but I don't believe I could talk for 2.5 hours. As Matthew said, this is mid-year of the planning of the PC 862 continuing education credits. I've handed out a list, an update, and it's been even updated since previous update. So it's a moving target right now, and hopefully by the end of the year we'll all have our hours. You can go through the handout, and if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, you can just contact me, and I'll be happy to work with you. We usually schedule meetings at lunchtime in the legal department as an easy fix to get our hours during the year. And I don't think there's one in July scheduled for July, but for the rest of the year I think we have some. So if you have any other conferences or any other places that you're going to be attending that may fit into this update, just give me a call and we'll talk about it.
All right. Sounds good. Timely report. Any questions about the report? Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Appreciate your help on that.
Thank you.
All right. Any other business?
Yes, sir.
All right. Then we're adjourned.